Hello everyone, welcome back to Labyrinth of Touhou. This time we'll talk about Kogasa Tatar, the cheery forgotten umbrella. So, when you look at her base stats, you notice that Kogasa has, comparative to other characters, a very meager 128 HP, 124 attack, 108 defense, 44 magic, 70 mind, and 80 speed. With the base MP of 14, gaining 1 every 17 levels, base evasion of 10, base TP of 14, base average recovery rate of 12, base MP recovery of 2, and of course, she has ailment resistances of 40 to poison and silence, poison, silence, and death, 0 to tear, 20 to poison and heavy, 128 to shock, and 20 to debuff. And then you look at her status resistances of 75 to fire, and physical, 100 to wind and nature, 125 to mystic, 50 to spirit, 200 to dark, and 75 to cold. So overall, looking at those stats, while she does have some decent ones, she's outclassed by both Yomu and Momoji in all stats with the exception of magic, and mind in Yomu's case, but only by a little bit. That doesn't really matter. So, looking at her resistances, she's very resistant to shock, but this is, in fact, she's the most resistant to shock out of any character in the game, having almost complete immunity to shock. However, this isn't the most useful. Even her resistance to dark doesn't make her that great of a tank when you look and you see Yomu also has great resistance to dark. So let's see if her skills make up for it. First off, you have Kogasa's Surprising Flash, which is a 5 MP cost spell that deals nature element damage to all enemies with a damage formula of 154% of your attack minus 74% of your opponent's defense. It has a tear rate of 40% and a shock rate of 40% as well. Its delay is 42. Shock will always decrease the opponent's action bar by exactly half of what they have. No more, no less. There's no altering its effect. Whereas the tear effect starts off at 12,000 and goes up to 15,200 if you're at max level, which is level 5. Next up, we have A Rainy Night's Ghost Story, which is a single target dark spell that costs 4 MP and hits for 250% of your attack minus 80% of your opponent's defense. And it has a tear ability of at level 1, 20,000, and at level 5, 24,800. The tear rate is 55, and it has a mind debuff with 100% debuff rate that starts off at 30 and goes up to 42. It has a delay of 55.9. However, do remember, while it does have debuff rate of 1%, there is debuff resistance on all enemies, so it's not always guaranteed. It's just a very high likelihood. Next up, Drizzling Large Raindrops. This is a 3-cost spell that hits an enemy row with the cold element, and its damage formula is 1 to 8% of your attack minus 75% of their opponent's defense. It has no special effects, but it does have a delay of 66.2. So, overall, those are some interesting spells. If we look at her passive, she has TV boost, attack boost, and evasion boost. Very odd, as only really attack boost is going to be useful. Like always, she has motivated hard and hands-on experience, which I will not explain. They do exactly as they say. Ability to surprise humans. Adds tear effect to all attack. The attack already had tear effect, the effect will be increased. So I think with this, this sort of sums up what Kogasa is all about, as we'll be seeing later. When you use Concentrate, you'll recover HP as well as MP. The recovery rate is twice as much as from backline HP recovery. So this one more seems to be for a tank, however Kogasa is not all that tanky. So that one's kinda odd. Sheer Force decreases elemental affinity and status ailment resistances of all opponents. So, as we can see, this works well with her Tear build, allowing her to inflict Tear more. But what else does she get from Tear? Well, she has a chance of recovering MP every single time you take damage. That works with easygoing with the tank build, but like we mentioned, she's not the most tanky, only in certain situations. And of course, while her MP recovery rate, MP is 14 to start with, it's not that great overall, but it's still enough that you probably shouldn't worry too much about needing to recover it. Next up, we finally have the ability that puts all this back together. Troubled Forgotten item. When the user attacks an enemy afflicted by tear, the user will recover skill level MP, yeah, and have all stats increased by skill level times 10. So this is 1 or 2 MP, and 10 or 20%. So overall, you can sort of gather the general idea of Kogasa to inflict tear and then hit them and get boosts from it. Tear, of course, lowers all of your opponent's base stats by 5%, which can be a huge boon, as that is actually fairly good. Of course, you can also inflict shock, which I already mentioned what shock did, which could be very good as well. Lowering mind is not bad either. But the real reason why you'd want to use Kogasa over, why would I want to use Kogasa over, someone with better attacking stats, Yomu or Momoji, and they're also better tanks as well. Well, that comes in her attacking abilities. While they don't seem that great at first, note that she is a physical attacker that carries Nature, Dark, and Cold. These are very hard to get for good physical attackers, especially early game. She provides a lot of utility in terms of elemental attacks, and so you'll be using her to get a lot of good hits in. And since really all Momoji's going to be hitting for is physical, and Yomu runs out after a first hit and only has wind, physical, and nature that aren't even that powerful compared to what Kogasa's packing, Kogasa's normally going to actually be hitting harder because, sheer force allows her to decrease elemental affinities as well. Meaning that not only are you hitting them for an attack that decreases their stats and could possibly shock them and lower their mind, but you're also hitting them as if they weren't resisting you, meaning you just have a natural damage up, which Momoji and Yomu do not have. Meaning Momoji and Yomu cannot do anywhere near the same damage as Kogasa, but they are, I will admit, better tanks than her, as while she does have some half-decent HP, it's nothing compared to them, and she lacks the recovery ability of Yomu. Of course, she still can take hits, so if later in the game you do want to invest in some of her easygoing or the harder perseverance, that's not a bad idea, I guess. But overall, she's just mostly a good physical attacker that, while lacking in power, makes up for it in utility of status abilities and good elemental coverages early on, before later in the game when you start picking up actual good attackers with wider elemental coverage. Because with 58 characters in the game, I mean, you're bound to finally get a person who fills the role eventually, and of course we'll do it with better stats than Kogasa, who boasts some of the lowest stats in the game. Of course, being a floor 1 characters, you would expect nothing less, but still, for what she is, she actually is quite good. For subclasses, starting off with Guardian. Not bad early on, but there's just better tanks. It is possible to combine this with easygoing to get some tankiness going and be a okay tank, but it's still better off using Yomu. Just Kaine, probably. Or Momoji. Next up is Monk. Actually not bad. It gives Kogasa a bit more tankiness as well as a bit more attack power, exactly what she wants. So this is fairly well suited for her. As well as the healing isn't bad, since as she's tankiness, she can get some healing off this. Combined with easygoing means that she's not actually that bad as a tank, and can still do some decent damage. Next up, Warrior. This is what I'll recommend early, since I like to use her as a full-on attacker. As I mentioned, she's going to mostly be aiming for the enemy's weak points, and to do so, you want to invest as much attack to hit him as hard as possible. That's how she's going to make up for her bad stats, is by just hitting hard at the opponent's weak points, with her great elemental coverage. Next up, Sorcerer. She lacks any magic abilities, and while her magic stat is better than Momoji and Yomu's, it's still trash. I wouldn't recommend this for anyone. She lacks any healing spells, any buff spells, any debuff spells. Well, she does have one debuff spell, but the fact is that the effect is already so close to the maximum 50, it's 42% debuff, and so close to 50 that actually upgrading that debuff is actually terrible, since you will not, it's very ineffective and very cost inefficient. As a result, as a result I would not recommend Hexa. However, Toxologist is interesting. All ailment resistances are slightly increased, which makes up for a lot of her bad ailments. She gets HP, MP, and TP, which is not bad for her. And you can increase your ailment effects, which is nice. You can also provide some support with ailment reduction. And if you get inflicted by an ailment, you can get some healing off of it. Though it's not the greatest, due to the fact that you're mostly going to be going for the damage rather than the debuff, but if you want to use her as a pure terror character, which is not the worst if your opponent's weak to terror, then go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. This is not actually that bad like it is on most characters. Magician, not the worst, but she sadly doesn't have too much synergy with lots of MP or have enough base MP to actually give it out. Herbalist. Yeah, I suppose as a tank giving out a buff would be nice, but unless you subclass yourself as a tank, you're not going to be tanking too well. And if you're not subclassing yourself as a tank, then you'd probably be better off attacking, and if you're attacking, you probably don't want to be buffing people. Strategist. Not bad, but you're probably not tanky enough if you're going into a strategist and not a tank class to survive long enough for these buffs to stay around. And you're most likely just going to get wiped off the field and lose your strategist for the round, for the battle, and that'll be bad. Gambler. Like I mentioned, I like using her to hit hard, and while the doubled MP cost kinda hurts her, you might want to equip a MP up main equipment, and you'll be all fine and dandy to start hitting real hard with her. In fact, you can get some pretty decent damage despite her low stats, enough to match a lot of other characters. Diva is Diva. I'm going to stop mentioning Diva. I'm just going to say Diva is Diva in all these videos because, heck, you can use it if you want, but it's not too great in battle. With one exception. Well, yeah, I'll talk about the Infinite later. Next up, lastly, it's Transcendent. While she does do more damage as a Gambler, Transcendent's also not bad since she's naturally tanky. So you can, get some decreased damage as well as your HP and defense up, so you can actually take a few hits, which allows you to get easy going off and get some more MP back. Overall, it's not the worst, but it might not be the best either. Whether you go for Transcendent or Gambler depends on if you're going a bulky attacker or a full-on attacker. Honestly, while I do prefer a full-on attacker, definitely merits to being a bulky attacker. As we could see with Momiji. However, overall, if I were to have to rate Momiji in comparison to all our others, quick reminder, S, C, F, A, B, and then A, right? C and then B, no, I think this is, yeah, B then A. And now C then A. I don't remember, I'll have to go back and look up which ones I gave them. It's very hard because Momoji's on the CB border, whereas this is on the AB border. I could just say borderline. Borderline 2, borderline 1. There we go. Definitely still F. This is borderline, well no, this would be borderline 1, borderline 2, borderline 3. This is borderline SA, this is borderline BC. AB, there's borderline BC. So, new rankings. S tier is Reimu Hakuri, Marisa Kiyosame C tier, Rinosuke Mochika is F tier, Kaine Kamashiro is borderline 1, Momoji Inubushiri is borderline 3, and Yomu Kanpaku is borderline 2. However, Kogasa Totori I'm putting solidly in C tier. She has some very niche uses. In early game, she is actually not bad, however, she falls off very bad, and just her base stats do not support any playstyle other than Tear, and Tear is one of the weaker statuses in the game. Not to mention, her shock isn't actually that great compared to a lot of other characters. She relies way too much on Tear, which you're not going to be getting off too much. If you get it off, it's not going to be that effective. And then Sally, you're just relying on her base stats and moves, which are all unimpressive. So while she has uses, they are far too niche to make great use out of her. So our Sally had to put her in C tier. Well, next time we're going to be going over everyone's favorite, Rumia. Yeah! Until then, see ya.